What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Now today we have a pretty cool comparison video. I will be comparing all of the control boots out on the market right now. So from Adidas we have the Adidas Predator 24 with the fold over tongue. From Nike we have the Nike Phantom GX2. From New Balance we have the Tequila V4 Plus. And from Skechers we have the Skechers SKX01. Now I believe like the only brand that I'm missing is Puma, which they have the Puma Future 7, which honestly is basically the same as the previous model, just with like power tape just placed in a different area. And I honestly didn't really want to get it. It didn't really seem so interesting. So I guess that's the only boot I'm missing that's a control boot. So Puma, fix the Puma Future, give us something new, give us something different, and I'll have it back on the channel. But today we're going to be comparing these four. And honestly, I think that these boots, they're all pretty good. None of them is a terrible boot. None of them are bad. Each of them have like their own unique thing going on. And in today's video, I'm just going to do my best to compare all of the boots and try to help you decide which control boot to get. So I feel like with control boots, there is always something that they add just to provide grip, just like to provide more control. And so these boots kind of have that. And so we're just going to start off with that. So with the Adidas Predator, we do have these rubber elements here, which you guys can see are added in the area where you're going to be striking the ball and kind of making the most contact. You also find it here in the tongue. And these rubber elements are really grippy and they provide a good amount of grip in this area. So like when you're striking, sometimes when you're passing, when you're giving a ping pass or something like that, a lob pass, you do feel it. You do have a little bit of extra grip. And when you're shooting, you do notice a little bit more spin on the ball. And obviously, like this isn't going to make your shot better. It's not going to make you curl the ball like better. It's just, I feel like it's just easier to provide spin on the ball. And so if you have that technique down, you will notice it. But if you don't have it, obviously you won't really notice the difference. But for the most part, I really like this just because it's only in one area of the boot. So like when you're dribbling, it doesn't feel super sticky. It just feels like normal. So when you're dribbling with the outside of your foot, it feels pretty nice. And the upper here is a hybrid touch upper. So you guys can see it is pretty soft. It is a little bit on the padded side, not so much. And so if you do want like grip only here in this area of the boot, like a good amount of grip, then the Adidas Predator would be the right boot for you. With the Nike Phantom GX, the whole upper is basically like the grip control element. So here we have Nike Grip Knit, that is basically this whole white area of the boot, which is basically the all upper. And it is a knitted material. It is a one-piece knitted material. So it's a bit on the thinner side compared to the previous model. And the grip knit here is very sticky. It's like very noticeable in hand as well as on feet. And when you're dribbling with the ball, it is very noticeable that it does stick to your feet. And obviously when you're shooting and when you're curling, you do notice a little bit more spin. We also do get this little bit of race texture here in this form of this swirl, you guys can see. And you don't really notice it as much, but I kind of mainly noticed it when striking the ball. Like I did feel a little bit of these ridges. And honestly, I'd really like this sensation. Like you don't really feel it as much, but when you're striking the ball, you do notice it a little bit. At least I did, so I actually really like it. And the Nike Grip Knit is something that actually does work for Nike. Like it's very noticeable and it kind of does affect the ball a little bit. So you will consistently be getting like grip. And so if you don't like that, you don't like a grippy like sensation all the time, then this boot might not be for you. But if you really like having a good amount of grip on your boots all the time, then this is a boot that you should really take a look at just because it does that very well. On the New Balance Tequila, this is probably like the boot that has the least amount of like grip to it, just because I feel like New Balance didn't really prioritize that. Like you guys can see here, it does have a little bit of texture here in the toe box, but honestly, this won't really provide that much grip. It does like allow for the ball just to grip a little bit, so it doesn't feel super slick, but for the most part, it doesn't really feel like any of the other boots here on the table. It just feels like a standard knit. And you guys can see here we have texture here and here as well, but honestly, like I said, this texture doesn't really make any difference. Like I didn't notice that I had more grip or like less grip. It just felt like a standard boot, and which is fine. So if you guys aren't really into that grip material, then you should really take a look at the New Balance Tequila. But what I really liked about this is like the upper. This is a Hypo Knit upper, which is a knitted upper, and it's extremely soft. You guys can see how soft this upper is. It just collapses on itself. And this upper out of all of them that I have here is the softest in my opinion. And like straight out of the box, when you put these on, they already feel broken in. So this, in my opinion, is probably the most comfortable upper out of all these. They're just super soft. Kind of leans towards the thinner side with a little bit of a padded like liner. So it feels great on the ball as well. But I really like this upper, nice and comfortable. So if you don't really like I said, a grippy upper, then this is a boot that you should take a look at. It gives a real like sock-like sensation on feet. Next we have the Skechers SKX01, which this is a knitted base, but it does have some like overlays over top. And so it doesn't really feel like a knitted material. It does kind of have like a synthetic feel to it, like on feet. And you guys can hear like, the upper kind of makes a noise. But like once you do break them in and like wear them a lot, they just feel super soft on feet. Like I was honestly impressed by the upper of this boot just because when I start wearing them, they did get softer and they just felt really comfortable on feet. They still had like that thin synthetic vibe to it. Like I didn't really have like a sock like sensation with this boot, so that's a little bit different, but it's a really nice feel in my opinion. The upper is a bit thinner. It has more of a pingy feel when you're kind of passing around and shooting. And you guys can see here the upper is covered with micro texture. You guys can kind of hear it and see it here. So it's scattered all throughout the boot. And you really feel it in the hand. And it's really noticeable when you're dribbling only. Not so much when you're shooting or like trying to curl the ball when passing. It's mainly when you're dribbling. Like I did notice that I had a little bit more grip compared to like New Balance Tequila or like another boot. It just added a little bit more grippiness to the ball. Not to the same extent as the Phantom GX or the Adidas Predator here with the rubber elements, but there was just something there that didn't allow the ball to slip, and you just felt like you had a little bit more control over it compared to like standard boot like a New Balance Tequila. So I feel like this is like a pretty like in between. It's not overly sticky, but it's not like super slippery and slick. So if you really like that, then I would go for this. And this has more of a synthetic feel to it rather than like a sock like feel to it. So if you like that combination, then probably consider the Skechers SKX. Alright, so in terms of fit and comfort, like all of them are pretty comfortable boots in my opinion. Like for me, they fit me pretty well, and I don't have any issues with them at all. The only one I did have issues with was the New Balance Tequila. I had a little bit of rubbering here in the heel, and I did get a little blister, and that was like the second time wearing them. And I got a blister on my left foot, not on my right, just my left, which is weird. I guess that's because it's my planting foot, and I guess I just had a little bit of movement, and my heel was moving up and down when planting, and so that kind of caused some rubbing here. But after like I wore grip socks and kind of tightened them here in the top lace hole, that issue went away, so I no longer had any blisters while wearing this boot. But I also heard that people had no issues with the heel, so I guess it just depends on your heel shape. So in terms of the fit, they all fit pretty great. I would say the New Balance Tequila and the Phantom GX are the widest out of the four. The Predator and the Skechers kind of lean towards being a little bit slimmer. They still do have a decent amount of width to them. Like I'm able to fit in them, and I do have a pretty wide foot. And the Adidas Predator fits me pretty comfortably. I had no issues with it. And the Skechers SKX also did fit pretty well. I found that after wearing them and breaking them in, they did fit a lot better. And so just because the upper just needed a little bit more time to soften up. So after like break-in period, they were great. But if you do have a wider foot, I would recommend taking a look at the Nike Phantom GX and the New Balance Tequila. The GX is pretty wide through the midfoot, but does have a little bit of a narrow toe box. And New Balance Tequila does have a wide foot variation, so this is the wide foot variation. And it's pretty wide all throughout, even in the toe box. Like I didn't have any issues wearing these boots. And also I believe the standard version is pretty wide. In terms of sizing, the Skechers SKX, the Nike Phantom GX, and the Adidas Predator do fit true to size. I wore my usual size 9 and they fit perfectly. The New Balance Tequila does have a different sizing, so I got these in the 9.5, and then the 9.5 fits pretty well. I do have like a little bit of like space here in the toe box towards the end, but honestly that doesn't really bother me. I'm kind of used to that. And so I would recommend going half a size up with the New Balance Tequila. Alright, so moving on with the sole plates. So with the Nike Phantom GX, I do have the AG sole plate, not the FG. And I just prefer the AG just because it's a little bit more flexible. And honestly, I don't really like the Cyclone 360 sole plate. I feel like it's too aggressive, and I mainly play on AG. So I did go for the AG variation, which is the same sole plate found on the Nike Phantom GX1. And I really like the sole plate just because it's nice and flexible. It feels really natural on their feet, and it has a good amount of stability here in the midfoot, although some people say it's a little soft. For me, it's fine. And the traction is all conical, so it's perfect for AG. Like, these are pretty safe. The New Balance Tequila also has a really nice sole plate, which is also on the flexible side. It's not as flexible as a Nike Phantom GX. It is a little bit more stable here in the midfoot, but it still has a flexible forefoot. You guys can see how flexible this is. And like I said, I do prefer like a flexible sole plate. and this does have all conical studs with these like small bladed studs on the edge of the sole plate. You guys can see there's 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3 on each side, and so it just provides a little bit more grip. They are a bit on the smaller side, but you kind of do notice them when you're like on the side of your foot and cutting really tightly. And for me, I wore these on AG and I had no issues with them, but my AG is a bit on the newer side. Next, we have the Adidas Predator, which features a one-piece sole plate with an external heel counter. And this sole plate is kind of a bit on the responsive side. You know, there's a good amount of like stiffness here in the midfoot. It's not super like snappy, but it is a bit more compared to the Tequila and the GX. So if you want a little bit more of a responsive sole plate, then go with the Adidas Predator. And here we have the stud pattern, which are all triangle studs, which we have seen from Adidas in the past. And you know, they're pretty good. They work fine on AG. I had no issues with them. For me, this is a pretty good stud pattern and sole plate. I don't really mind using these. They feel pretty nice and responsive. And here we have the Skechers SKX, which I think is probably like the stiffest sole plate out of the bunch. Here in the midfoot, it's very stiff. And also here in the forefoot, it does have a good amount of like snapback in my opinion. And the stud pattern here is kind of these like small like oval studs kind of. Like I found these work fine on AG. I had no issues with them. Since they're small, they kind of penetrate the ground well and you're able to rotate and stuff. So I had no issues with this. So all these boots are excellent in my opinion. They perform well, they fit great, they're comfortable, and they have their own unique thing going on. Alright, so now I'm going to rank these boots based on what I like and what I prefer. So I guess in last place would be the Skechers SKX. And this being last place doesn't mean it's a terrible boot. Like I just prefer the other boots and what they offer. But this is a really good boot. It actually really surprised me when I did use them. And I really like it just because when you're striking the ball, it just has a nice pingy sensation. I really like that it's a bit on the thinner side. And the grip here, you do feel it when you're dribbling. And I wouldn't mind wearing these like in a match or anything. But I think I do prefer other boots over this one. But this is still an excellent boot. Next is the New Balance Tequila, and the reason why this is above the Skechers is that it's just a little bit more comfortable. Like the upper is just so soft, and you don't really have any like grip elements on this boot. It's still a really fantastic boot, nice, soft, super comfortable, probably the most comfortable out of all these. Alright, so now we have the GX and the Adidas Predator, and for me, I would honestly pick the Adidas Predator over the GX, just because I like the way this wraps my foot a little bit more. And I really like the grip elements here in the striking area just because it has a nice sensation when striking the ball. The Phantom GX is also an excellent boot. Like you get grip consistent all around. And it's also very comfortable just because it is a knitted material. So it's very sock-like as well. But for me, I just prefer the Adidas Predator just because it just feels a little bit more solid. And like I said, I just really like that sensation when striking the ball with the rubber elements here in the strike area of the foot. So that's it for today's video. Hopefully this video did help you decide which boot to get. I do have full reviews on the Nike Phantom GX as well as the Adidas Predator up on my channel. And I do have playtests for the Skechers and the New Balance and, well, all of them. I do have playtests for all these boots. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you're notified for the future reviews of these boots. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.